Okay, let's start with this question today. What does it mean to amend? To amend. So if you look it up in the dictionary, you will find that it means basically just to change, to make an adjustment to something. So when we talk about the amendments in the Bill of Rights, we're really looking at changes to the Constitution. That's a really, really important idea to understand. Some people think it means an addition. Now, oftentimes, amendments do add something to the Constitution. However, it's important to understand that sometimes they actually just take something away. So it's just a change in general. Make sure that's clear to you. Now, when we're looking at it here, and I want to focus on this one idea too, the Constitution really becomes like a living document because it can change. You know, when we talk about the Constitution has lasted us for 225 years and it's been so great, it really has been, and it has lasted a really long time. But it's important to understand that it's not the exact same today as it was when the Founding Fathers created it. That's an important thing to notice here. The first 10 amendments are titled the Bill of Rights, though. These amendments were designed, and first off, they were passed immediately after the passage of the original United States Constitution. And they were designed to protect us from the government taking away certain rights. So they guarantee us certain rights that can't be taken away no matter what. I guess unless you would say that a new amendment was passed to get rid of the Bill of Rights, but I don't think that'll ever happen. Our target for today, I can explain in my own words what rights are guaranteed to all people by the First Amendment. So our target for the day, we've got our Browns fan stealing our target there. Oh man, got to chase him. Apparently that guy's floating. There we go. Parking lot. You know you've seen this person before. And you know what, that person's annoying, but this person's even more annoying to me. You know, just they look like they're in the lines, but they're really not. Anyways, running into Heinz Field, they're floating higher now, and they got to Heinz Field, and man, this is kind of different this year, I guess. Now that we no longer have this person on our team, but he says you can't catch me, and then James Harrison, a little bit of helmet-to-helmet contact there. There we go. Thanks, Mr. Harrison. He says, let me show you how to do some real target practice. Throws the target over there, and then goes and throws the Browns fan over there, and the target is good. And the Browns fan is also good. And the Browns fan is thrown onto the target, which kind of serves as a little bit of a boat. And it's going to take them back to Cleveland. A little bit rough, too. I guess it's a little bit mean. Okay. Anyways, back on track here. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. So, do we have the right to say whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want? Well, think about it. The reality is, we don't. And that's an important thing to note. Like, we say freedom of speech, but it's not a perfect absolute right. You know, it's not absolutely in every single case that we have the right to say what we want. There are certain times that we don't. So let's talk about this idea of freedom of speech. It's the ability to say whatever we want within reason. And when I say within reason, this is all about the Supreme Court interpretation. So make sure that we understand that the Supreme Court and really the judicial branch, they play a significant role here in helping to explain what this stuff really actually means. This also includes the ability to dress as we wish and act as we wish, because those are considered to be symbolic speech, which is important. So you can talk and say what you want on the phone, you can dress as you would like, and you can act as you would like. For those of you who don't know who that is, that guy's name is Weird Al. He was a singer back in the day, and maybe he still is, I don't even know. But made up some silly, goofy songs and acted kind of weird along the way. Now, what about this? Let's say that you're at my disco club, and yes, it is my disco club. I've got a disco ball here, and everybody's dancing around having a good time, and oh, you know who you are, those hyper people who are like that person in the magenta there. But then you got the one person in the corner is like not having a fun time, and they decide to ruin it for everybody, and they yell, "Fire! Everybody run!" And that one poor person gets run over, and yep, you know it. They got trampled. They're no longer with us here. Is it the person's fault who yelled fire if there was no fire? What do you think? Like, should they be in trouble for that? And the reality is, they would be, because you cannot use your speech to cause harm to somebody else. Now, let's say there was a fire, and they did yell fire, and somebody got hurt, and it's like, whoa, well, they got trampled on. This person's the one who yelled fire. That's a different story. This person yelled fire because they were bitter at everybody else having fun, and they weren't really into dancing, so they yelled just to make everybody upset and run. Interesting idea. It's kind of like the idea of a bomb on a plane, or saying there's a bomb on the plane. Can you yell that? No, you cannot yell that. You can get in a lot of trouble for that. There are many, many, many different things you cannot say, such as that. Even though you're thinking, oh, I thought freedom of speech wouldn't protect you from swearing, which in reality it protects you from swearing a lot more than it protects you from these types of things. Now, why was this included Pretty simply, it's a basic right. And what can you do without this freedom? Well, I don't really know if you really think about it. So that's the reason it's the First Amendment and really the first piece of the First Amendment. So this is a Supreme Court case that dealt with swearing. Somebody wore a jacket that had a swear word on it. It was just expressing a political opinion. And seemingly you would say, oh, that person should get in trouble. But the reality was they didn't, because that was not a specific type of speech that was believed to be really causing a problem here. What they said was originally that it was fighting words. And the Supreme Court ruled on this 5-4, so a very, very close case here, that there was no evidence proving that he was trying to cause a fight with his language. He was just expressing his speech. They said one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric. Well, nonetheless, it's the ability to express yourself and express an opinion. So interesting to think about that idea here. On the other hand, there's some other ones here. Let's talk about school. So in school, can you express yourself there the same way? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. In the case of Tinker versus Des Moines, Iowa here, the Vietnam War was going on, and a lot of people were wearing these black armbands to show their protest against the war. In the school board in this specific school district, I don't believe it was Des Moines, it might have been though, they passed a policy that made it so that you couldn't wear armbands, or black armbands. You know, you couldn't be showing your displeasure with the war. The Tinker family, who had children attending the school, they had their children wear them, and they refused to stop, and they were told that they can't return to school until they take off the black armbands. This went all the way to the Supreme Court after they were suspended for not taking them off. And the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in favor of the Tinkers, saying, you know what, the First Amendment still applies to schools. Maybe not in every situation, but still in a lot. And the truth is, there weren't any major disruptions caused by the armbands. So, something interesting to think about. There's another one here from 1983 in which a student gave a student council speech using really inappropriate language without swearing. The student was suspended for 2 days and appealed his case. And the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 against the student, saying that, you know what, you can't just say whatever you want, even if it's not swear words. If you're going to use bad words or things that suggest something inappropriate, you can still get in trouble for that. So in schools, we can limit your right to speech if it's disruptive, inappropriate, and goes against educational goals. Basically, with all of the ideas here, with school, you'll see. If you're doing something that goes against educational goals, it's not going to be protected, even if it's mentioned in the United States Constitution or in the Bill of Rights. Important idea here. So, in short here, let's say this. With free speech, you can say a lot, you can do a lot, but if you start taking away somebody else's rights, that's when you're going to lose it. Okay? Does that make sense? Thumb spectrum real quick. Okay, I hope I got you with that thumb spectrum too. Anyways, freedom of religion. The government can have no official religion. This is the second part of the First Amendment, by the way. This is known as the Establishment Clause, so we can't have a set government religion that everybody has to follow. Plus, the government can't force you to practice a religion at all, so if you don't want to practice a religion, that's your choice. It's the idea of separation of church and state. That's a goal of our country. That's something that we really have been founded on. That actually goes all the way back into the New England colonies early on. So, key idea. So if you want to be some sort of a Christian religion, practice Judaism, if we go to anything here, you know, Hindu, Buddhist, Islam, or nothing at all, whether it be agnostic, which means you don't believe in a specific religion but you believe in a higher power, or atheist, which means you don't believe in any higher power at all, you can be those things. Now, why was this included? Well, it's the basis for people coming to our country. I mean, people came here saying we want our freedom of religion. We want to be able to practice our own religion. Many people, that is, not everybody. So that's a key idea here. And plus, many people view this as being just one of those rights. You should never take away somebody's ability to practice what they want to believe in by forcing them to believe in something. That doesn't even make sense. Now, what is a real religion? Well, this is a little bit tricky. They say religious beliefs must be sincerely held. So people don't have to prove what they believe in, though, being true, because, well, I don't think most religions can be proven true. That's the whole idea of it. Most religions rely upon faith, you know, trusting in something that you can't see. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to prove this. However, you can have a religion that takes away somebody else's rights, and that's a key idea here. Also, the government can pass laws that restrict religious practices as long as they don't force someone to violate their religion and go against it blatantly. Like the one idea I had is, like, let's say that it's really, really snowy outside. And it was a Sunday. Could they say, okay, the roads are closed, nobody's allowed to travel on the roads? The answer is yes, because that's not forcing them to violate their religion. It might be limiting their ability to practice it to an extent, but it's not forcing them to violate it. If we said you have to eat this specific type of food, and that was a food that was believed to be sacred and you don't eat it to a certain religion, that would not be allowed. Now, this idea of the separation of church and state came up in a Pennsylvania case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. This is the Abington School District versus Schempp in 1963. Pennsylvania state law used to require that at least 10 verses from the Holy Bible shall be read without comment at the opening of each public school on each school day. I think you can assume that we don't have this anymore. Maybe this is why. Two families sued, though, claiming this violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment because they were playing favorites, basically, with a specific religion. What do you think? Well, the Supreme Court thought 8-1 that this was not okay, because reading the Bible really is showing favoritism towards a specific religion, even if you don't want to listen to it. And the opinion given was that religion, or excuse me, this is really opinion on my end here. Religion, if comparative in study, is fine. Oh, I'm sorry, this is theirs. Religion, if comparative in study, is fine, but mandated religious practice violates the Establishment Clause. And when I say an opinion, and I apologize for getting a little bit mixed up there, this is a Supreme Court opinion. So not only does the Supreme Court tell you what their vote is here, they also give an opinion saying this is what we really mean by this. Now, freedom of the press, this is part 3. We have the right to have and control the media. And the people control the media, not the government. Very important idea. So that means that the people control newspapers, TV news, magazines, the internet, the whole 9 yards. They're the ones that get to write what's on there. The government can't stop us from writing what we want. Why do we care? This is huge, huge, huge idea. Because if the government controlled the media, they could lie to us on everything. Think about all the stuff we get from the news, even though we don't trust the news all the time, and even though we say, like, oh, well, this station says this, and that station says that, and this one's right, and that one's wrong, like, whatever, you have your opinions, that's totally fine. But here's the reality. If the government controlled the media, they could lie to us about everything that's going on. I mean, if they controlled it, they could drop a bomb in America on our people to say, hey, we need to go to war with this other country because they just bombed us. And we wouldn't even know the difference, because how would we know the difference? See, that's the key idea that we have to understand here, is by us having control, and us being the people, having control of the media, it protects us tremendously from the government being able to turn into a tyranny. Extremely important. So, it includes the news, it includes magazines and interviews and everything else that we can see. Why is this important? To keep the people informed, to make sure democracy functions correctly. Because when you vote, you need to be educated. It's the reason we have social studies education, by the way. But we need to actually have accurate information that we can look at. Important idea here. The limitations here, well, defamation. You can't lie blatantly and on purpose in the media. You can't do it in a way that's deceitful, trying to cause people to believe it. There's some magazines, like if anybody here has ever heard of The Onion, it creates fake stories. That's a little bit different here, where they're creating fake stories for entertainment purposes because it's understood that they're fake. You can't purposely lie trying to make somebody else look bad, though. There are some cases of censorship where you can censor certain things. The Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeier case was an example of a school district that was censoring what was in their student news. And it was because in the situation that was provided, it was going against educational goals. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, censors certain things. If you think about TV, you don't get to watch a real rated R movie on regular TV, correct? They will censor or block out certain things, whether it be things that are going on in the movie, whether it be like blood, whether it be the language. There are a lot of different things that get censored. Same thing happens on radio too. And there actually were times in our history where speaking out against the government was not allowed, but that's not really in the that's not really the spirit of this law. This is one of the actual things we want to be able to happen in the press, is to be able to criticize the government. The Sedition Act and the Espionage and Sedition Acts were all examples of this, but they were all overturned and found to be inappropriate. Curtis Publishing versus Butts is a great example of this, though, in 1967. I know you're laughing there. It's the guy's last name. Anyways, a publisher ran a story about how an athletic director named Butts fixed a football game, but they didn't really have any proof or evidence, so you can't really do that. And what ended up happening is the AD Butts, he sued and won $460,000 out of this because it damaged his reputation. The publishing company appealed, and the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of Butts, saying, you know what, if you don't have the information, you can't go and do this. You can't publish stuff that's lying against somebody, and you can't make them look bad with it. So if it was an accident, well, you should have done your homework, basically, and you should know. So Interesting idea there. And Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeier, I'm just going to skip through this one. Okay, let's see. Okay, in the last ones, the right to assemble and petition. People can go group together to discuss issues or anything else. In other words, we can have town hall meetings when we want. And people have the right to petition the government when they want. The reality is, though, that sometimes these rights, well, they're not going to be quite as effective. So let's say this first. Assembly. You can have this right because in the Intolerable Acts, it was taken away. If you remember clearly, people were not allowed to have as many town hall meetings as they would have liked. That was a part of the Massachusetts Government Act. And let's say you have an issue that you're unhappy with. Let's say you're unhappy about your teachers. If you guys all want to meet together outside of school hours when it's not going to disrupt educational goals, you could, as long as you're not doing anything that's going to cause anybody else to lose their rights. The right to petition is important too. People in America felt like Britain was not really listening to our petitions, and that caused some issues there. So they wanted to make sure that we had the right to petition and that our government would listen to them if we had enough people on the petitions. The limitations, well, on assembly, there's not really much that is a limitation other than you can't create a public nuisance. So let's say you wanted to meet to prove that you're angry at your teachers. You couldn't stand in the middle of Route 19 blocking traffic and causing people to not be able to drive by you. And the right to petition is very, well, I could say it's very limited in the sense that, like, there's no guarantee your petition is actually going to be passed. But that's the part of the deal with the petition. You can write a petition when you want. You can try to get people to sign it. It just doesn't mean it's going to be passed. This is an example of people assembling and blocking something off and doing illegal actions here. So that would be an illegal one. So in conclusion, the First Amendment gives us many things: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, and the right to petition. And having these rights does benefit us because if we didn't have them, well, things would be very different. And the way that I think we can kind of look at these rights is that they are a nice little shield protecting us from our government. Because, see, that's the key here. We want to make sure that we are protected from the government and that it cannot become a tyranny. I hope that made sense. Make sure you take the Blended Schools quiz here. And let's see, if you're up for it here, we have some brain blasters too. All right? Good luck with that.